Next, I want to demo finding your floats and adding Tabby. What I'm showing you is a standard overshot pattern, and when you read this pattern in the book, it will say add Tabby. And you say, well, why do I have to add Tabby? So the thing that you need to do with this pattern and with most other patterns is to check your floats. The float is dependent on what you're weaving. If you're weaving a scarf, you want the floats to be pretty small so that you don't snag the scarf. But if you're weaving a pillow that can have long floats on the back, that's not an issue. So you can check the float length. In this case, let's change it and we'll say that any float that's 5 or smaller is fine with my pattern. Do I want to search the back or not? If we're looking at a pillow, it's okay to not search the back. But if we're making a scarf, then it is okay to search the back. Search the warp. Yes, we're interested in the warp. Yes, we're interested in the weft. So now we will pick find the floats. When you look at the draft, it will show you a list over in this corner that lists all the floats that are greater than the number that you have. You'll notice there's this float here is 6 threads long. It goes from the top of this red box to the bottom, and these markers mark the location of it. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 threads long, which is too long for our plans for this fabric. If we go to max down here, it will show you the maximum float, and it happens to be on the back from here all the way down to there, and it's 9 threads long. That is that float. And you could hit the next float, and it again, you have another float here that's 9 threads long, and it's a work float this time on the front, and not too great. If we look at down the list, they're all listed here as warp floats. There are a lot of them. It says 0 weft floats. That means there are no floats that are out of range going in the weft direction, the horizontal direction. You can see that these 1, 2, 3, 4 warps is the length of the float on that, and that's acceptable in our plan. So now what do we do about it? Sometimes you can just go in and you can alternate and change the treadling, or you can change the tie-up, or you can change the threading. You can find it many different ways. But one easy way to do it is to use Tabby. Let's dismiss our float thing now that we know we need something here. And we're going to add Tabby to this draft. It's a 2-2 twill, and so I'm going to pick Add Tabby. So my Tabby choices are, I can put the Tabby treadles at the very beginning, in the middle, or at the end. It's your choice. Some people like them in the middle because they like to walk their treadles, and so they'll treadle the left, and then they treadle their Tabby, and then they treadle their right, and then they treadle the other Tabby. So, but I like them at the end, so I'm going to put them at the end. You can use the same color, and usually it's a good idea to use a similar color to your warp for your Tabby, because it won't show as much. But we're going to pick red, or we'll pick let's pick, and I don't want red. Let's pick this pink color so that it doesn't show as much. This tells you how many pattern picks for each tabby pick. Most of the time it will be one, but sometimes you want to do 2 pattern picks and then a tabby and so forth. So that's what that choice is for. Sometimes when you weave, you want the tabby to appear before the pick, and sometimes you want it to appear after the pick. In this case, we're going to start with it before the pick, so I will leave this turned on. And now I will generate the tabby. And I'll zoom in a little. And you can see that it really stretched out the pattern, and it actually makes it kind of difficult to see it. And that's because when you weave overshot and this type of pattern, often what you are doing is you're using a thin tabby, a thin thread for the tabby, and you're using a thicker thread for the pattern thread. So I'm going to adjust these. I'm going to go to my project setup, and I'm going to go to my yarns, and I'm going to leave the warp color alone, and I'm going to take the weft color for the tabby, and I'll call it tabby. And I want to set it much tighter. And just to really demonstrate this, we're going to set it, I don't know, 70. It just depends on, it's not a set, it's actually the pick, the PPI that we're setting here, but we're using this number for how big we want it. So I'll pick done for that one. And you'll notice it went to thin. So the display size will be thin for that one. Now let's pick this one. This is our pattern weft, so I'm going to change that one and call it pattern. Because that's our pattern weft. And I'm going to make this one thicker. Let's say we're doing a wool, and the wool is usually set at about 10.2. So we'll pick that, and you'll notice that says it's fat. So we'll pick done. We've done that. And now when you look at your draft and you look at it, you can see the design better in it. When you are weaving a pattern like this and using a thicker, fluffier pattern weft, that pattern weft will cover the tabby weft similar to the way weft face weaving works. And so although this, and I set this one to balanced, but although it's showing the weft here, very likely when you weave, you won't see that. But it's always a good idea to use a color that's fairly close to the warp threads. So let's go over and we'll pick color setup, and we'll find this pink color. It's going to be starred, so it has to be this one here. So that's our weft color. And I'm going to make it close to the warp color. So I don't know, that's about, looks like about right. And then I pick set color, and when I go back, it changed to that color. Now it's not exactly the same, you can still see the difference here, but it's closer and it'll give you a better idea for the pattern. It won't be distracting to have that red color there, and you can still see that. And you will still see the overshot pattern. So that's how to add a tabby to your weave, and there are many, many instances of different types of drafts that call for tabby. And it also shows you how to check your floats, and you should do your float checking after every draft before you weave it, because although in this case it was pretty obvious, there are many times when you might have an extra long float that just doesn't want to show up visibly on the screen, and then you weave and you're very disappointed. And that, I believe, completes all the different choices that you have for the Designer app. They're things that you use every day for your draft designing, especially finding floats. You should do that on every pattern.